Coming.
What's happening in this coming 2023 Major League Baseball season? The divisions to watch, the players to watch, and also who we think will, even though we're homers for our LA Dodgers, who we actually think would be the strongest divisions and teams to come out on top in that marathon 162 game season. So hang tight. We have a quick chat with Jorge Marti on all things Major League Baseball, and we hope you'll enjoy. Stay tuned. As the intro stated, we're back again with our buddy Jorge. We are very excited, and I want to get his expertise on a lot. A lot has happened leading into this 2023 upcoming MLB season, and Jorge and I are old school fanboys of MLB. That was the first major league sport that when we were kids, that we jumped into, and man, I got away from it for a while, all my fandom. But when I came back, baseball's different now. The level of athlete, the rules kind of perplexed me a little bit. My son's playing Little League. My daughter's playing softball. Got me re-energized. And as I'm getting into this, I pepper Jorge with questions all the time about what's this? Why is this? What's happening here? So today we're going to jump in, as I said in the intro, on a couple of things that I think could help propel baseball moving forward. I hope that they're awesome options for baseball to bring in new fans because of some of the new players that are profiled these days, such as Shohei Otani, and we'll get to that in a second. And this World Baseball Classic, for the first time ever, I actually paid attention, not because of Otani, but it's interesting how it turned out to be a showcase for Otani. But so let's get right into it. And first things first, we'll talk about who we think are going to be the front runners, division-wise, player-wise, team-wise, in all of Major League Baseball. But before we do that, baseball as a whole, World Baseball Classic 2023. If the presentation continues moving forward from here with the way I just saw, 5+ million, about 5 million people saw that. Now, people are like, 5 million, is that a lot? I'm like, well, yeah, for something that has been considered somewhat obscure all this time, absolutely, this is a big deal. And so I'm hoping that the larger scope of baseball benefits from what we just experienced in the World Baseball Classic, that it could benefit Major League Baseball, and some of the stars from Trey Turner, who our Dodgers just lost. But, he was the star of the whole thing outside of Otani. So the largest audience in history for this event, World Baseball Classic, just took place. Little under 5 million total viewers for that championship game. That's a big deal. That's bigger than every NBA playoff game last year, pretty much. And I thought that was fantastic. I think they delivered on the game. I think the game was fun to watch. What say you?
Oh, beyond, so many of the games, once you got into the knockout rounds, gosh, just looked fantastic. So Japan game was one of the best games we're going to see all year, and one of the great comebacks. And USA, Japan. You mentioned just the stateside. Did you know that 62 million people watched that game in Japan? That's half the population.
Yes.
So that shows that this World Baseball Classic is huge. You got the stars of the game, and to me, I think it's great. I think players play. We started to see this in the previous. I think it was 2017, where Dominican and Puerto Rico, they really saved everything, a little sabor latino, as I love to say. And they really started to get into, show some personality. And I think there was more of that. But you know what? I think the players really got into this one, just from a national pride standpoint. But from the baseball standpoint, hope comes through for teams to for a long time. And it's all in what Team Japan did. They did. It's just incredible fundamental baseball, coming down to the fact that that team does not strike out very much. So if you looked at it, they work counts, they put the ball in play, they do steal bases, they pitch well, they play great defense. Talking about the fact that, don't sell out for power, sell out for patience, sell out for, not striking out, putting the ball in play, and getting teams get out of a bunch of guys who hit 15 to 20 homers, but also steal 15 to 20 bases, run the bases well. And I honestly think is works money ball is going to what we need to learn. You know how, like in football especially, teams kind of like, mimic what the previous champion did. Well, baseball needs to do that with Team Japan and take a long, hard look, because I think we've always seen the teams that don't strike out a lot and and play great defense and pitch very well, the teams that are going to win. Not ones a bunch of times. Those are the teams that end up getting knocked out in October.
Basically getting back to the fundamentals.
Yeah.
We've had so many things fall by way of the star driving of each league, the star-driven leagues. Basketball in particular, football is becoming that more and more, and baseball has had that. And that's always been the fear, because when you get away from the fundamentals, like basketball, one of the negatives, one of my favorite players ever to watch is Steph Curry. But also, Steph Curry has impacted the game to a level, even down to the itty-bitty kids playing. Everybody's throwing up threes. No one's picking and rolling. The basics, which still are the foundational pieces that will allow you to win at a much higher level than anything else. Everything that you just mentioned that Japan enacted is exactly what I hope most of our major league teams get back to. The stats and the analytics and all that stuff, I get all that. But it was great to watch to me, because when they needed a breakthrough pitching-wise, power-wise, stealing, whatever, it was available to them because they knocked out all the foundational pieces of everything that you're supposed to do before you even get to that. So it opened up opportunities for them. They were almost impossible to beat this time. They were solid.
And you know what? Team USA still almost got them. I mean, they've got so many stars. It's such a wonderful. I loved how many guys really came out and embraced wanting to play for Team USA. I think I think it's wonderful for the game. David Ortiz, Big Papi, kept saying we should have the for it. I love that it's coming. It's going to be a regular thing. I really feel like this one and the last one were probably the first times that this felt like a real World Cup, where you really saw the greatest players in the game playing. And I think just give me more of it. I mean, for me, spring training games are less than a week. So I'm to the games that matter. I don't like seeing pitchers come out after 2 innings and then, and they're not built up. I want to see them going later in the games. So then I'm kind of like, hey, bring on opening day, which thankfully is almost here. But to get those games that really mean a lot, it felt like the playoffs. It really, really, I had so many people coming back to me. I mean, fantasy football people who were just locked in games, very much like a March Madness feel, and it was fantastic. I think it was a big win. I want to see more of it.
March Madness and the College World Series. That energy of the College World Series is incredible. That's what this felt like to me. And so I think there's a place for it moving forward. Maybe they come back every 2 years. I think it's slated for 3 years from now, in 2026. I think there's something there moving forward. I think it'll be good. I love the energy that Mexico brought. Love the energy that some of these other countries brought to the game, man. I thought it was fantastic. You feel bad for the losers, but someone has to lose. That's one thing I love about sports, live sports in particular, the competitive nature of it. I speak on it all the time. It's like there's nothing like the predictability is out the window, because now you have no idea what's going to happen. Bettors on the edge of their seats, whatever story that you've bought into, whether it's your team, your country, a specific player that may play in MLB and they're representing their country of origin. All that plays into it at a high level that's very difficult to beat. So we're both
one last thing I wanted to ask. How great was it that it came down to Shohei Otani against Mike?
Yes. Storybook ending.
ESPN just had, its top 20 players, and Otani was one, Trout was two, and the thing, it's just, it was baseball drama that just
Mm-hmm.
it just was perfect. It was delicious.
Couldn't have written it any better.
Could not have written. Well, I mean, it would have been fun to see. For me, it would have been fun to see, Mike Trout hit a home run, and that would have tied the game. And
That's
then,
true.
And then go extra innings.
But I agree with you, by the way, but you got to like Otani. He seems to be a very likable, good guy. Oh, you bumped out there for a second. What did you say?
It's his year. I've already declared
yes.
It's the year of Otani. It's his free agency year. I mean, he's going to be the MVP. I hope they go to the playoffs. Eagles don't have to trade him. I hope they stay in the race.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we do, I think it's going to get surpassed by what Otani is going to do, because he's doing it pitching and hitting. I think he's just utterly beyond special. Unicorn, whatever you want to call him. He is just. I love what he's doing, and I really think it's just have just been. It's gonna be incredible.
I'm looking forward to it. He's must-see TV. He's one of those things that, whether you're an Angels fan or not, if you're just a fan of baseball, not even baseball, if you're a fan of just watching some incredible sports action, I think this guy is a must-see. And to be honest, if you're in Southern California, it's going to be much more affordable to be able to go to an Angels game versus a Dodgers game or even a Padres game. And that'll be a perfect segue. Go see Shohei Otani, watch him on TV, get the eyeballs, bring baseball back. That type of player. As Jorge mentioned, a unicorn is not the type of player that you're going to see. I don't think you see him every other generation. I think since Babe Ruth did his thing against, in my opinion, much lesser talent. And this guy, Otani, as far as these athletes go today, he's very young. He's 28 years old, I believe. Yeah, so this is going to be incredible to watch.
And if you look at Babe Ruth's best years when he was pitching and hitting, they don't come close to like what Otani has done in the last 2 years. His strikeouts are nowhere near, similar, but and granted, he had to play the outfield when he wasn't pitching, but where Otani doesn't have to play the outfield, he just has to pitch and then designated hit. But I think I think you look at what Otani's doing, and we're Babe Ruth is the second greatest player of all time behind Willie Mays.
I'd agree. Yeah. Say Hey Kid was awesome. Awesome. My favorite growing up. My dad taught me about Willie Mays very early, and I just latched on to him back then, and he's still the metric by which everyone else is measured as far as I'm concerned. So I'd agree with you there. So let's move on. That World Baseball Classic, we're both pulling for it. I think it's going to be awesome moving forward. Shohei Otani, the player in any sport to watch right now as far as I'm concerned. His story, he's still learning English, and I know he understands more than he can verbalize, but that whole story of someone coming here and saying how much he appreciates our country and the sport that was built here, that is so big and been so in his country of origin, and how it's actually been, how much he loves it. So I'm looking forward to this season led by this guy. Let's jump real quick before we wrap up here on, I'm looking at three divisions this year, I think that stand out to me. The American League East, which always has the Bronx Bombers and, the Boston Red Sox. That rivalry there is always interesting to watch. But everyone else in that league is like, don't forget about us. The Rays are no joke. They've been really good for a while now. And so when you take a look at that American League East as well as the National League East, now that was the biggest one that I think people sleep on quite a bit. I read this stat. Three-headed monster. What do you have? The Phillies. You have the Braves. And you have the Mets. Last year, you had two different 101-win teams in the National League East. And the third team, of that Hydra, the Phillies, they are the one, they didn't win 101, but they actually made it to the World Series.
Yep.
And so, a third playoff team, the Phillies, even though they advanced all the way to the World Series. So as much as the Dodgers get all the hype, and I like it because they're our Dodgers, as much as they get the hype, that National League East is, to me, I'm more interested in watching them than I am on the American League East. What say you?
The National League East, I think, is gonna be a great division. The one thing that's kind of tempering enthusiasm a little bit is they've had some injuries. The
Hmm.
Phillies lost Reese Hoskins for the season. The
Hmm.
Mets lost Edwin Closer, and anybody who's seen that the, his entrance is just, it's one of my favorites since Eric Gagne and doing Welcome to the Jungle. But
Hmm.
and the Braves, their 20-game winner Kyle Wright, he's starting the season on the injured
Hmm.
list. So and their closers. So teams have suffered some injuries. These teams can hit still though. The Hoskins, they're going to be missing Bryce Harper for part of the season, but they've got Tree. I mean, they've got Alec Baum. They've got, they got this dirtbag kind of player named Bryson Stott. JT Realmuto is baseball, can hit. They've got a couple of Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler. Who knows what kind of bullpen? I think the Phillies are definitely definitely a contender. The Mets, if they can get healthy seasons out of Max Scherzer and and Justin Verlander, which everything's trending with that lineup with Pete Alonso, is underrated. One of the players out there. Brandon Nimmo, who's a great leadoff hitter, and I mean, just great players. And they got a couple of big time prospects coming up that are going to be ready. I think they're going to be good. The Braves are going to be good all the time because they have,
Hmm.
in my opinion, maybe the best player in the game. But it's not on the Angels.
Ronald Acuna.
He's,
Acuna?
yeah, center.
Yes.
He's a right fielder. He
Yes.
does everything. Hits,
Hmm.
steals bases, plays great defense. He's one of the most electrifying players in the game. Matt Olson, their first baseman, has just been absolutely crushing the ball in spring training. Sometimes that carries over and lost for the season. Lost at the beginning of the season. I'm leaning toward the fact that in his second year, he's gonna I think he's gonna come back and hit 35 40 bombs, maybe even 40 plus
Wow.
bombs, and
Okay.
and play excellent defense, knocking over 100 runs. That team, another thing that the Braves have, they had 101 games, they won 101 games. One of their best players, Ozzy Albies, is
Mm.
coming back. He missed half the season with injuries, so they need him to come back because they also lost,
Mm.
like the Dodgers lost Trey Turner, they lost Dansby Swanson.
Mm.
I mean, he's a
Hmm.
guy who I think he's missed 5 games in the last three full seasons. So, I mean, this is a guy who is just, he plays every day. He's excellent. He's a Gold Glove caliber defense. He's got power. He's got speed. He's just kind of like one of those players that just wins. He's star, but he's now over with the Cubs, where they're going to want him to be that guy. But
Hmm.
as far as the Braves, they're replacing him with a defense first guy. I think I think all three of those teams. I think the Mets and the Braves kind of come back a little bit. The Phillies
Hmm.
will be 8 wins. Team just among the best. Plus, the Marlins and the Nationals are both kind of in rebuilding. The Marlins maybe they're a little bit further along in their rebuild. They've got some pitching. They might be a little bit. They got some pitching. They have some hitters who don't, might be kind of that sneaky team.
Okay.
Really right. It's a three-headed monster. If I had to pick somebody right now, I would pick the Mets because I think they will trade for a
The Mighty
closer at some.
Mets.
I think they'll trade for a closer during the season to kind of solidify the back end of the bullpen, and I think
Hmm.
their starting eight is really deep, and they play to really give teams problems.
Mm.
So they're
Okay.
my, and you got Scherzer and Verlander. Those guys are ageless
Yes.
wonders. I think we're
Hmm.
gonna be. I think they're gonna be in the.
So, with everything that you just laid out there, which is incredible, by the way, that is why I knew once I would ask that question of you that would bring all that out as far as the National League East is concerned. That's where I'm going to keep my eye. Even more so since we're on the East Coast. Let's go ahead and stay with the American League East. I still am way more interested in checking out that dogfight in the National League East. But what do you think about the American League East? The Bronx Bombers are always the Yankees. They're always the Yankees. They're going to be good. They're going to be strong. They're going to be powerful across the board, hitting, fielding, pitching. I think they're strong as usual. Boston, I think they're going to have a tough time this year compared to the Yankees. And how do you see that division?
I think Boston could. Honestly, I think the Toronto can hit.
Mm-hmm.
They can hit. They've got just enough pitching. Alek Manoah. I think I shared with you his when he was mic'd up for the All-Star game last year. The starting pitcher. He was I love that was one of my
his personality.
That was one of my favorite. Like a big burly type. Toronto has just enough pitching. The Tampa Bay Rays, all day they pitch. They pitch just enough. Their pitchers go 5 to 6 innings. They've always got just enough hitting. They don't have a great hitter's park, but they're going to be good. They're phenom. A backslide. Some injuries last year that he played through. He didn't have to have surgery. He just kind of played through his wrist and hand injury. That guy is one of the most talented players in Major League Baseball. And you have him at shortstop. That guy, I think he's going to take a major step forward and be pitching that you never pitching and relief pitching. They are almost flawless all the way through. So they're going to be in every game. Keep an eye on the Baltimore Orioles. They have a couple of the top prospects. The top. Adley Rutschman, their catcher, was the top prospect before he got called up this year. And this year, Gunnar Henderson, their third baseman, who got called up at the end of last year, he's now the top prospect in baseball. And they're coming up, and they've got a young lineup. They've got just enough pitching. I think they're going to be in the dogfight. They're going to be like 80 to 85 wins this year. They're very much going to be in the mix. And honestly, the Red Sox, even though they've got some former Dodgers, Kike Hernandez, Justin Turner, guys who are like Kenley Jansen, guys who have special places in my heart very much. Yes, but I just don't know if the Red Sox and Rafael Devers, who's one in the discussion game, I think I think they're going to fall that they're going to have. That's where they're not going to be able to get it done.
That's interesting. You bring all that to the table because, you and I always discuss about, we can go a little deeper another time, but how the vast majority of the talent, let's take football, for instance, California, Texas, and Florida are considered the three primary states for an overabundance of available talent in football. It's from the prep all the way up through college days. So baseball, it's been proven time for over the decades that the vast majority, I guess because of it's like the reason why Hollywood moved in its early days, late 1800s, early 1900s, from the East Coast to this little hamlet of dry area of what we now know as Hollywood, was because you can pretty much film year round and not have to worry about snowstorms and things of that nature. I think that affected baseball in a positive manner also over the past 100+ years, where you see where most of these players come, and there's an overabundance of baseball players that come from California, Southern California in particular. And so I say all that because it's funny when we talk about divisions and East, West, things of that nature. And you just gave us a rundown on the National and the American League East. Both of those divisions to me are the two strongest divisions overall by far. And it's interesting with what you just laid out for us for the American League East. In the past decade or so, every single team in that division has won the division at least once. So they have the best dogfight going on as far as I'm concerned. You have the three-headed monster in the National League East, but the American League East in particular, when you have that thrown into the mix, and it's not just, say, our National League West with our Dodgers dominating the division, even though they don't have as many chips as they should. But they've dominated that division for the past decade or so. And before that, the San Francisco Giants dominated the division. So now I think that's why the Padres, and this would be a good segue. Thanks for that information on the American League East and the National League East. Let's go and segue into our Dodgers division. Let's talk a little bit about our Dodgers. Dodgers have been the king for a while now. And, they've had some changes. And when you have that much talent with Kike and Trey Turner and Bellinger and all these people over the last several years have now chosen to move on. It is what it is. You don't necessarily have to have the deepest bench in order to win. The war of attrition definitely helps in 162 games each year to have those extra players. But I think some new faces will come up. But the foundation with Mookie and Freeman and Will Smith, catcher, the baddest catcher in the league, who's very understated. Even with how well I think the Dodgers are positioned, I knew it was only a matter of time before the little bro down south of the Dodgers, the San Diego Padres, were going to do, a little bit of this and go, all right, you guys keep talking. You've worn the crown. You haven't done as well with the crown as you should have the past decade, but we're here. So, with Machado, I knew that was kind of a play that he and his people were saying when, I got one more year. And I said, good for him. You remember I reached out to you. I was like, hey, is there a chance we're going to get him? And you're like, nah, they're playing this up. That's a chess move, right? And rightfully so. Right. Hey, you're always right. You're typically right on this stuff. So Machado, when is Tatis coming back strong?
We're going to find out. I mean, he's missing, I believe, of his PED suspension. So I know he had some surgeries last year, but it's coming back strong after a PED suspension. Read into it.
That will be interesting.
He's one of the best. He's one of the best talents in the game. He's going to get moved off as shortstop, though. He's going to move to center field because they signed Xander Bogaerts. So he's going to play in the outfield.
Okay.
Probably easier. Not defense isn't going to be as much of an issue. Him. But I mean, that team is just so loaded with stars. You mentioned Machado. We haven't talked about Juan Soto, who for my money is the best hit. He's the best hitter in the game, best hitter in the game. And everybody, if watch an entire at bat, scratching or when he takes a pitch and he does his little shuffle. There's nothing better. That's gamesmanship to the nth degree. And
I told my son, watch that guy. He's strategically getting in the pitchers and the defensive players. He's doing it, and he does it. He does it with this type of nerve. I love watching that. I said baseball's about that strategy. Yeah. I mean, that's the part of the game I love.
And series like days after his 21st birthday, and he was the number 3 hitter on that team. So I look at that team. It's loaded. It's got great pitching at the top of the rotation. They've got Josh Hader, one of the best closers in the game. They play decent defense. They're a great team, and I in the play. I mean, it got a monkey off their back because they've been getting beat up by the Dodgers for years. They're not afraid anymore. They're not afraid, and I think they're when a team breaks through like that and they're in that kind of window, the Dodgers. I'm not saying they're rebuilding, but they're find their legs in the big league. There are a couple of players I'm really excited about. I think the NL West, even though I'm calling the Padres to win the NL West, I think it's going to be a dogfight. I think it's going to be a tough one.
I think this is going to be a rivalry. I'm hoping for it, because there's no way we can match the length of time with the Yankees and the Red Sox and clubs of that nature just because of the length of that rivalry. But I think what's happening here in Southern California is going to be arguably the most interesting. You got the 3-headed monster in the National League East. You have just absolute domination by every team. They've had their turn in the American League East, and you come out west, and there's going to be a special rivalry between the Dodgers and the Padres. I think that can rival just about anything in baseball. So that to me is good for baseball. What's happened the past decade or so in the National League East is great for baseball. The Yankees, when they're good, is always good for baseball. And now I think with, as you mentioned, the Rays and the Blue Jays, I think they're going to make a great run a great run at the Yankees this year. So I'm excited with those 3 divisions. We'll talk about the other divisions on another run. But I think right there, that gives us an idea. And before we close out, as far as what we think on the primary pieces, at least leading into the season, 162 games, a lot can happen. As you mentioned, injuries, things of that nature. Who knows? Someone just flounders and maybe traded throughout. It's a long season. But again, chess moves. No one's playing checkers. It's the best thing, the ones who are going to survive. I'm not so concerned about the central divisions, but I do want to bring up one last thing before we close. Lots of things are happening as far as, the pitch clocks, bigger bases, things of that nature. We'll talk a little bit more about that as it's in play over the season, over the first couple of months. We'll do before the All-Star game, we'll do a touch in how the thing's going type of episode. But before we close out, will they repeat? Let's talk about, I left them last but not least on purpose because, they have lots of injuries right now. I think Altuve's been one of my favorite players to watch, even though they were hated because of trash can gate and all that stuff. But I will say that he's one of the most interesting. He's a little dude and he has no fear. And I love the way he plays the game. He just goes at you. And it doesn't matter. I love for him, it's that size of the fight and the dog instead of the dog and the fight type of thing. And he brings it, man. He's special. Mm-hmm. And you and I are Dusty Baker homers because we first and foremost knew him as our Dodger guy, our starting left fielder for years. One got a chip here, and he's always going to be a beloved Dodger forever. But he's now a World Series champion. He has a phenomenal organization behind him, even though they played a little rough, and that's a nice word I'm using there, a few years back against us. What do you think their chances are in advancing this year or just surviving this season? Because Altuve's not coming back, they say, until possibly June because of his little injury from the other day. What do you think about the Astros?
Yeah, I mean, they lost for Verlander. They had so much pitching coming up behind him. So we're gonna see kind of how they out, kind of like that old dog who could take her. But I look at this. I look at that team. They've got a great chance. I talked about the teams that don't strike out. They're traditionally one of the teams that strikes out the least in Major League Baseball. So that's a big reason why they're so good. I mean, they're still very much an excellent team. Missing out on Altuve, has been bad during spring training, so it's something to kind of keep an eye on. I think their chances are good that they're going to repeat, but I mean, they're going to have a tough time getting west because the Seattle Mariners have just a very good pitching rotation. They're half top to bottom from the 5 starters, and their closer and their relievers is excellent. So, and they play in a pitcher's park. I look at them, if anybody's going to unseat them, they're there. And honestly, you get a healthy season from Mike Trout, and you get the year of Shohei. Anthony Rendon is shown to be healthy, 3 doing well. Then sudden you've definitely got something. You've got the makings of a good team right there. But if I had to put my money down right now, it would be on Houston. And the only way I feel good about it is with Dusty, because I still haven't forgiven Altuve, and I still haven't forgiven Alex Bregman.
Right. No, I get that. I completely understand that because I'm trying to be objective here for the sake of this episode, but I agree with you completely. So just as a Dodger fan, first and foremost, this is good stuff, man. I think this will be everything that we stated here laid out, the specifics on the players that you laid out, very in-depth. Great stuff, man, as usual. Thank you for that. We will definitely check in. We want MLB to thrive this year. Everything Jorge laid out, guys, that stuff is, you can keep your eyes on what's happening. I think it's going to lay out through the remainder of this year. I think we're going to see most of what we discussed earlier, barring professional injuries, because these guys are rough. It's tough what they do up there. 162 games, traveling, family issues, things outside of your control. So many things can dictate the outcome of this 162-game season before we even make it to the playoffs. I want it to thrive. I think the baseball classic leading off, I think a generational, once generations, multi-generations player like Otani. I think the recent history of American League East, National League East, and how that can play into what's going to happen this season, as well as what's happening special in Southern California between the Dodgers and the Padres, along with Houston sitting there in the southern central part of the country going, you guys go ahead and talk about the East, both National League American. You go ahead and keep your eyes over there. We're just gonna do our thing here, nice and quiet here. Let Altuve get better. We're gonna work some things out through this 162 games, and we're gonna look up in August and September and goes, man, we were talking about all these other things, but look what Houston's done. Look where they are. And everybody's gonna shake in their boots again. Makes for some great storylines. So appreciate Jorge joining us again. We're gonna definitely jump into MLB. Again, sometime soon here, pitch clocks. I'm real interested on how that's going to affect things moving forward. In particular, the presentation of the television product. That's the biggest thing for me. The larger bases, limits on the defensive shifts, pickoff throws, and all these different things that are being enacted. I'm glad. I'm really happy that baseball is attempting to do something a little different than they've done in the past. But as usual, Jorge and I, if there's anything big that comes up or anything worthwhile that happens throughout this early part of this new season, beginning on Thursday, the 30th, we'll come back and have a quick discussion about it. But until then, we just want to touch on a few items, bring it out to you guys to share. Hopefully you enjoy. Like, subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Jorge Martin, Familia FFB, right? .com. Yep. Here's his tag there below his name there. Reach out to him, man. It's his wealth of knowledge for all things sports. 35-year sports journalist. We really appreciate his time. We'll talk to you soon, my man.